Hello everyone, this is Sarah Tolbert-Hurysz, and this is Project 2 for ELPA 6872 at ETSU. And for this project, my classmates and I were asked to identify an accrediting body and to take a look at the standards set forth by that accreditor and to think about how those standards address technology. For my project, I looked specifically at the Accreditation Commission for Education and Nursing standards for associate degree nursing programs. I chose this particular set of standards in this accrediting body because of my work at New River Community College. I supervise our nursing programs, and my nursing faculty are currently seeking ASIN accreditation for our associate degree nursing program, which leads to RN licensure. So the goals I have for this presentation are to give you a quick look at ASIN as an accrediting body, to think about the 6 standards they present for associate degree nursing programs, and then to look at a little more closely at how technology shows up in those standards. So ASIN as a accrediting body is a little bit different than some of the others we've learned about this week. ASIN is different in that it's a specialized accreditation for nursing programs in particular, and it doesn't exist just within higher education. ASIN will accredit nursing education programs at hospitals or government agencies as well, and even nursing programs that exist outside of the U.S. It is recognized by the Council of Higher Education Accreditation and also by the U.S. Department of Education. And for those nursing programs that may not reside within a 4-year institution, ASIN accreditation can serve as a gatekeeper so that students can use Pell Grants and financial aid provided under the Higher Education Act to pay for their tuition. And looking at all of the materials that are available about ASIN on their website, I think we can really boil down their mission to improving the quality of nursing education in the U.S. and otherwise. And I think we'll see this is common across the accrediting bodies, that their goal is really to think about the quality of education in the U.S. or in higher ed and to improve that quality and have everyone's eyes focused on that kind of improvement. The goal also really then for ASIN is in improving the quality of the education in these programs is to provide the quality of practice once these graduating nurses become practitioners. And looking at the 6 standards that ASIN has for associate degree nursing programs, they are in the following areas, and I have not written out the full standard for each one of these because they're quite long, and then each standard has 11, 12 criteria that colleges or education nursing programs must meet in order to be accredited. So if you want to see that in its full text, I've got a link at the bottom of this slide. But if you look at you can see on the screen that the standards relate to the mission and the capacity of the nursing program to operate. It sets forth some standards for faculty and staff in terms of their credentials, in terms of policies that must be available to, at the institution or within the program to support the faculty and staff. It looks at students and what kinds of resources that they have access to or should have access to, what kinds of policies and procedures should be in place to protect them and made available to them to see. Standard 4 looks at curriculum and spends quite a bit of time in its criteria laying out how that curriculum gets developed and reviewed. Standard 5 looks at the resources available to the program, both physical, and learning. And then Standard 6 is probably the most complicated and robust standard in the ASIN set for associate degree nursing programs. And it sets forth the requirement for end of program outcomes for all students and has extensive guidelines for how data is collected and then analyzed. It's probably Standard 6 is the only outcome that really does not explicitly name technology within its criteria, but I think it does work on the assumption that institutions would have access to some kind of technological infrastructure that would allow for the collection and maintenance of all of this data. So we look specifically at how technology shows up in the mission and capacity standard. It shows up in criterion 11, and it basically says that if there is a distance education component in the nursing education program, then it has to match up with the institution or the governing organization's mission and philosophy, as well as the mission and philosophy of the nursing education unit. So again, there has to be some kind of comparability between the distance education and the in-person education. Standard number 2 incorporates technology when talking about faculty, and it requires institutions or governing bodies to make sure that faculty have access to support and professional development with any instructional or distance education technologies they may be asked to use as part of their teaching. For students, there are actually 2 criteria that show up. One is that if technology is used in the program, and I think most nursing programs would have technology either in simulation labs or with learning materials in textbooks or software to support some of the learning in class, that there is an orientation provided to those students and that they have some support on campus to learn how to use that technology if necessary. And then the second criterion is that if there are any technology requirements that the students have to meet, or any policies that govern their use of technology or their participation in distance education, that all of that information is available to students, that it's up to date and clear for them to know. In the area of curriculum, there's one criterion related to technology, and I think this is one that I'm inferring a bit, but it looks very similar to what we would see in SAC-COC standards, that if there's any learning activities, instructional materials, or evaluation methods that are being used in one type of delivery format, that there has to be comparable and consistent materials, activities, and evaluation in another delivery format. So basically any in-person classes or hybrid classes would have to be consistent in their use of activities, materials, and evaluation as an online class. And then in the resources area, there are, I think, 2 criteria that mention technology. And one is basically that any technology that is used, learning technology that is used, that the faculty have input in that and are a part of that decision making, and that technology is current, that it's easily accessible by students and faculty, and that it's comprehensive in meeting the needs. So I think that just guides some smart and strategic choices about technology that are used. And then the other criterion mentioned here relates to ensuring that the resources that are used within the program are really sufficient to meet the needs of the students and the faculty in the teaching and learning environment. So if technology is used, it needs to be what is relevant and up to date and sufficient in its scope and students' access to it to meet their needs. So I think as we look at the various criteria that are set forth in the ASIN standards, we can see that they do mention technology, and that technology is well integrated into those outcomes, which impressed me quite a bit. And I think these outcomes were, or these standards, were updated in 2017, so I think they do account for the current environment. Thank you.